Australia, the University of Wollongong in New South Wales. And therefore, India-Australia relations is something which I've been tracking very closely. So at the outset, let me welcome you all to this distinguished public lecture series conducted by the Jindal Global University. And this evening, we are very privileged to have with us His Excellency Barry O'Farrell, the High Commissioner of Australia to India, to speak to us on India, Australia, and the Indo-Pacific region. This is a topic of great interest to us at the Center for Security Studies and also the Center for India-Australia Studies at the JSIA, where we have been tracking the various geopolitical and security developments in the Indo-Pacific region. And in recent months, we've also seen a wider interest in the Indo-Australian bilateral strategic ties. And many of our students and researchers have been keenly following the various developments, which is actually a good thing, because what we require at this time is greater scholarship and fresh ideas on how to promote India-Australia relations and help them to realize their fullest potential. So the program for the evening will be like this. I will hand over shortly to the Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Rajkumar, to deliver the welcome address, followed by the Dean, Dr. Sriram Cholia, to make his opening remarks before I hand over to His Excellency. His Excellency has kindly consented to take a few questions at the end of his talk. So for those of you who have questions, you may direct them to me. We have a 30-minute Q&A. Please keep your questions short and to the point so that we can take in maximum number of questions. And finally, I'll hand over to Professor Sean Starr to make the concluding remarks. So with that, let me now invite Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Rajkumar, to kindly deliver the welcome address. Over to you, sir.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ishir, and a very good evening to all of you. And it's such a pleasure to welcome all of you to this distinguished public lecture event where we have the presence of our distinguished India, the Australian High Commissioner to India, His Excellency Barry O'Farrell. Barry, of course, is a very keen observer of India, but more importantly, a long-time friend of India. And I'm very delighted that he consented to be part of this initiative at a difficult time when all of us are struggling to figure out how we can all respond to this ongoing pandemic. The O.P. Jindal Global University has been at the forefront of forging strong, substantive, comprehensive, deep, and pervasive relationship with Australian institutions. And we're very fortunate that we were able to establish early on the Center for India-Australia Studies under the dynamic leadership of Professor Sean Starr, who is also present here. The center itself has grown from strength to strength, and remarkable achievements have happened in a very short span of time. I also want to say that today's event is hosted by the Jindal School of International Affairs. The school was set up as a new initiative in the study of international relations. It has pioneered a number of programs. The first program that the Jindal School of International Affairs launched was the Masters in Diplomacy, Law and Business, the first of its kind master's degree program, which took off phenomenally well in the year 2011. And then, of course, over the years, we have grown from strength to strength, and we launched again probably Asia's first BA in Global Affairs, which again took off quite well. And today we have a fantastic group of students joining every year in the Bachelor of Arts in Global Affairs. Of course, over the years, we have also launched the Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and other such degree programs. The university itself has also grown from strength to strength. To introduce the university, JGU today has become a fledgling academic community with over 6,500 students, over 700 full-time faculty members in a fully residential 100-acre campus located just outside Delhi. In fact, I will take this moment, even if it's not happening either here, I want to show you this is how the campus is. So only, bad part of this is that there are no students. So the campus is now a fledgling, beautiful community waiting for the arrival of our students, hopefully, sooner than later. I want to say that it's a very special occasion for us because we have a very rich developed tradition in our university, particularly with the Australian High Commission. The Center for India-Australia Studies itself was inaugurated by the previous Australian High Commissioner, and we've had very extensive engagement with the Commission, High Commission itself. And now, of course, as I said, we have an old-time friend of India who has become the High Commissioner some time ago, and he is delivering today's distinguished public lecture. I want to end here by saying that India and Australia have too many things that we will align our interests, but I would like to focus a bit on the non-economic interests that I believe are very critical. Clearly, both of us are democracies. We believe in the ideals of democracy, the strength of democratic institutions, and how democracies address complex problems. Both of us are also in countries which believe in the strong tradition of rule of law and independent institutions, including an independent judiciary. Both of us, India and Australia, are pluralistic societies which believe in diversity, and the notions of pluralism is deeply embedded, in our case, in history and in our culture, and clearly in Australia's case, its own commitment to pluralism and diversity in all its forms and manifestations. The fourth aspect of both India and Australia is the fact that we are both deeply committed to education, and education to be involved in social and economic transformation. That's something which Australia has gone very far ahead, and the Australian higher education system is a beacon of hope and light and inspiration for many countries. And we in India would like to draw a lot of inspiration from what Australian universities and Australian higher education institutions have done. The fifth aspect of it is one of the things that we should be focusing on is that the future of Asia and the world is going to be dependent upon how young people are going to shape that future. India is a young nation with over 850 million people in India, less than 35 years of age. When most parts of the Western world will become older, India will be younger and will be younger for a longer time. Young Indians and Australians have an opportunity to shape the future of the world, and that is also going to form the bedrock of this relationship. So I want to end by saying that this lecture that we're hosting today and the relationship that we've established with Australian universities, many of them, and Sean will talk a bit about it later, is part of a larger effort to build a strong and substantive alliance and collaboration of democracies and pluralistic societies in the Asia-Pacific region. Both Australia and India, for very different reasons, have a very big responsibility to shape that future. And there is no better time than the time when we are facing a global health crisis than to talk about it and to reflect about these issues. With those words, I would like to extend a warm welcome to Honorable His Excellency Barry O'Farrell, and I want to extend a very warm invitation to Barry to visit our campus. This is also one of the very good times to visit our campus. I'm going to give you an invitation to come and stay with us here on our campus. Right now, the campus has 25 plus peacocks, hundreds of exotic birds and plants and flowers with no students. And we will love to host you on campus. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Let me now invite the Dean, Dr. Sriram Cholia, to formally introduce the speaker and make his opening comments.
Thank you, Shishir. Greetings, everyone. Special thanks and welcome to Excellency Barry O'Farrell, High Commissioner of Australia to India. Sir, we are so honored to have you here and eager to hear from you. I will simply remark at the outset that this is a landmark year for the reason that the Vice Chancellor mentioned, which is that this is a crisis year, but it's also the year when we converted the Australia-India partnership, which was previously called only a strategic partnership since 2009. We changed it, the nomenclature, and upgraded it to comprehensive strategic partnership this year. So 2020 is a landmark year in bilateral relations for that reason. And it's not simply adding of a prefix. I'm sure High Commissioner will explain what the meaning of this is, because when we upgrade it from strategic to comprehensive strategic, it means that both the scale and the depth of the cooperation is expanding, and many issue areas, some of which the Vice Chancellor touched upon, like healthcare, and rule of law and democracy and these kind of things, but also strategic cooperation in a geopolitical sense. The document that unveiled the comprehensive strategic partnership this year spoke about a variety of new initiatives, including a joint work by Australia and India in collaboration with to uphold the centrality of ASEAN in the region. Also, these Pacific Island nations, where Australia has traditionally played a very, very strong role. So these kind of fields. There is also the trilaterals that were mentioned that caught my attention. The two leaders, Prime Ministers Modi and Morrison, spoke about the trilaterals that Australia and India have with Japan and with Indonesia. And very recently, we started a new trilateral dialogue with France as well. So there's Australia, France, and India also happening. So lots of such interesting new initiatives that we are seeing. And this signifies that the intent of the two sides in Canberra and Delhi is that together, when we are a team, we have an impact on the region. And the region, of course, is Indo-Pacific. And so it's not only a bilateral give and take, but something broader when we say strategic, comprehensive strategy. I just want to highlight for the audience a few developments this year that make this more salient. The first, of course, is Australia took a very courageous stand on the issue of an impartial inquiry into the origins of the coronavirus, which has, of course, become a scourge for the whole planet. And Australia drummed up support across the world, and more than 120 countries in the UN General Assembly supported it, including India. So this was a landmark event, and this put Australia forward as a leader, not only in Indo-Pacific, but for the global commons and for humanity and for public health, which is should be a global public good. So these, so this has in turn led to retaliatory steps. We know that China has, which is the largest purchaser of Australian commodities, has placed restrictions on wine, on beef, on barley. We hear that cotton is being restricted, and there is speculation that even coal and iron ore, which are Australia's core exports to China, might be placed under restrictions. So we are now talking about a situation where Australia has crossed the Rubicon, so to say, and is trying to diversify its partnerships, and is also standing for truth and justice in the world. And so when we talk about Indo-Pacific, free and open Indo-Pacific, balance of power in Asia and all these things, what it ultimately entails is truth and justice. And that's what Australia is standing for. And I think many of us in India have stood up and saluted Australia for what they've done this year. So 2020, all the more reason that we are hosting no less than the respected High Commissioner of Australia today to talk to us. Let me introduce Ambassador Farrell briefly for you. He has been in politics and public life for decades. He was a member of parliament for the state of New South Wales. He was a premier of the state of New South Wales. Premier, my guess is it's roughly equivalent to what we call chief minister in the Indian federal system. And he has served with distinction in these positions. And now he's High Commissioner to India. He's no stranger to India. He's been doing what we call para-diplomacy or sub-unit diplomacy, even when he was Premier of New South Wales, where he was promoting trade relations with India on behalf of the state government of New South Wales, not necessarily of the whole of Australia. But now he represents the whole of Australia in India. So it's a very exciting appointment by Prime Minister Morrison. I'll conclude by simply saying that the roles of our top leaders often get underemphasized in our social science environments in the universities. We often say that it's the structural dynamics, and Vice Chancellor also mentioned that there's alignment, deeper alignment. Yes, all those things are there, but without the two M's, I will say, Morrison and Modi, we would not have reached this stage of very advanced cooperation in so many fields. And no better person than High Commissioner Excellency Barry O'Farrell to tell you about this, because he is from the Liberal Party, which is headed by Scott Morrison, Prime Minister Scott Morrison, and he knows him very well and intimately, and that's why I think he has been entrusted with a key relationship to advance it, and he's been posted here in India. So welcome to India from our side, High Commissioner. We, the people of India, the academic community are all very, very keen about your endeavors and to support your endeavors, and you have our word for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Chowley, for that introduction. Can I acknowledge those others who spoke, like Professor Kumar? I have brought the Navy along with me. I'm sitting here with my Defence Attaché, who was a captain in the Australian Navy, and I noticed that we have that in common. The last time I saw Professor Kumar and Professor Starr was in Sydney back in the days when, as long as you could afford it, you could turn up at an airport and get on a plane and go wherever you wanted in the world and not have to worry about this disease called COVID. So it's great to be with you. It's a pleasure to be invited to speak at Jindal Global University, an institution that's not unknown to me. I have a university scarf hanging on the door of my study back in Australia to remind me of two things. Firstly, the impact of Australians at centres of excellence here in India, and I pay compliments to Sean Starr. But secondly, the importance of the education as a key connector between our two countries. My sincere thanks to the students of Jindal School of International Affairs for joining us here today. This has been a disruptive time for all of us, but no more than people trying to pursue their education. And I greatly appreciate your efforts to participate in what I hope will be a stimulating discussion led by you after my remarks. I do hope that one day we'll eventually meet in person, and I hear what Dr. Kumar is talking about in terms of a visit to the campus, and I look forward to that. But that will only happen when the pandemic doesn't limit us to virtual meetings. But maybe I'll see the students on a research fellowship in Australia in years to come, or once they've been posted there with the Indian Foreign Service. Now, I've been asked today to talk about India, Australia, and the Indo-Pacific, and I'd like to begin the discussion with a very basic premise, and that is that Australia cares about the Indo-Pacific because it's our neighbourhood. It's where we live. So much of our wealth comes from, or is reliant upon, this region of the world. And if we want to preserve our energy security and protect maritime trade routes, then we have to focus on the Indian Ocean as one of our highest priorities. If we want to strengthen our economy, it means responsibly utilising, protecting, and maintaining a presence throughout the maritime environment, including the Indian Ocean. It's where we have one of the region's largest economic exclusion zones and sizable search and rescue zone obligations. And it goes beyond that. The Indo-Pacific is fast becoming the world's strategic centre of gravity. Economic, political, and military power is steadily and inevitably shifting from the Atlantic to our region. The Indo-Pacific is projected to account for 2/3 of the world's economic growth in the years to come, and it's also home currently to 6 of the world's 10 biggest military spenders. So it's where much of the world's economic opportunities lie. It's also a focal point of competing interests and potential instability and conflict. Australia recognises our responsibility to support stability and the rule of law throughout the region, and to help our partners do the same so that we can benefit from the growth the Indo-Pacific offers for all of us. The Indo-Pacific is our neighbourhood, and so India is our neighbour. Our capitals may be 10,000 kilometres apart, but our countries are much closer. For a start, we share the Indian Ocean, which laps both our coastlines. This makes us both stewards of a global maritime resource. We want to preserve freedom of navigation and commerce and to safeguard the marine environment for generations to come. Our people-to-people links go deep. 1 in 35 Australians are of Indian ancestry, either born in India or have a parent, at least one parent, who was born in India. And while the pandemic has obviously disrupted the course of normal business, before it struck, there were around 100,000 Indians studying in Australia and another 360,000 visiting as tourists. Indian migrants are set to emerge as our second largest migrant community behind the British. Hindi and Punjabi are amongst the top 10 most widely spoken languages across Australia. Our business ties are strong and growing, and so too are our strategic interests. You'll recall Prime Minister Modi outlining India's Indo-Pacific vision in 2018. It included open trade, transparency, a central role for Asean, and a rules-based order where the rights of all states were respected. That's a very natural complement to Australia's vision for the region, which is for rules and norms to provide peace and a space for all to prosper. Open markets, rules and cooperation leading to economic integration, and growth in a region resilient to the economic and security challenges we all face. In other words, the links between our countries aren't just fleeting or opportunistic, they're enduring. And demographic and structural forces mean they'll only grow stronger in future. We have before us potential for historic cooperation across the board in areas like health, security, counter-terrorism, cybersecurity, infrastructure development, enhancing supply chain resilience, and strengthening regional maritime security. All are crucial avenues through which India and Australia can collaborate to secure the type of region in which we both want our citizens to live and prosper. Both of our nations know we will encounter hurdles along this journey. We've seen the devastating impact that COVID has had on us, the people we know, and the economies we rely upon for sustenance. This global pandemic is far from over, and the full extent of its impact is yet to be tallied. But we do know COVID has accelerated many of the negative trends in the Indo-Pacific region, trends India and Australia would like to reverse. The disease has cost lives, it's exacerbated instability, and threatens to undermine hard-won growth and development gains in this region. And it's coincided at a time when great power tensions are rising. The use of grey zone strategies and coercive tactics is growing. Strategic competition is sharpening across the Indo-Pacific, including in the East and the South China Seas, as well as in the Himalayas. And all of this means India and Australia face significant hurdles at a time when our resources and our attention is spread across multiple domains, making coordination between us more important than ever. Now, the US-China relationship is amongst the most important in the Indo-Pacific because relations between these powers help set the tone, competition or cooperation for our region. So collaboration by India and Australia in tackling the challenges of shaping an open, free and rules-based post-COVID region is both essential as it is welcome. As I reflect on the period since arriving to take up my post, a key standout is the tremendous regional leadership shown by Prime Minister Modi and External Affairs Minister Jaishankar at a time when the world's largest democracy faced the unprecedented health crisis that is the COVID pandemic. They conducted considerable outreach, coordinated responses across the globe, including South, Southeast and East Asia. They convened a virtual summit meeting between members of the Southeast Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, with whom they also established an emergency COVID fund. Under their leadership, India deployed medical teams and distributed medicines and equipment across the region, and I would add drugs to the world. At the Non-Aligned Movement Summit, Prime Minister Modi sensibly urged the strengthening of institutions and greater cooperation for the good of all humanity. This outreach and leadership is the best way that we can emerge from this crisis. And it serves as a template for India's constructive leadership as an Indo-Pacific power, a nation striving to shape the neighbourhood for the better and to provide for the common good. Now Australia shares this responsibility. Our Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, warned recently that we should prepare for a post-COVID world which is poorer, more dangerous and more disorderly. To that end, Australia has been working to assist our international partners in their pandemic responses with a view not just to emerging from the crisis stronger, but also able to help shape our strategic environment for the better. These efforts start at home where we've used a range of measures to support Australian workers and to ensure our economy remains productive. We're applying our annual aid program of over 20,000 crore rupee to bolster countries across the Indo-Pacific so they can respond to the pandemic and build their resilience. We're advocating more economic openness and a regional acceptance of the rules and norms that have underpinned the Indo-Pacific's economic growth for decades. These efforts are reflected in key achievements like the Comprehensive Economic Partnership with Indonesia, which came into force in July. It's initiatives like this that will help the region to grow jobs, boost growth, and spur the Indo-Pacific's recovery from COVID. Now, throughout COVID, we've worked more closely than ever with our key partners, India, the US, Indonesia, Japan, New Zealand, the Republic of Korea and Vietnam, through regular phone calls between our foreign secretaries. We're working trilaterally with both Japan and Indonesia, and as Professor Chowlia mentioned, also recently with France to promote economic growth and inclusive regional approaches to shared challenges across the Indo-Pacific. And with like-minded partners, we're also working to bolster multilateral institutions, ASEAN-led bodies, the Indian Ocean Rim Association and the Pacific Island Forum to develop a common understanding of regional approaches to maritime safety and security, health and technology. It was in this spirit that we sought the independent review of the World Health Organization's approach to COVID, as mentioned by Professor Chowlia, to ensure that we learn the lessons of this pandemic and that it is fitter for purpose for the next one. We're gratified that the reviews received such strong support at the World Health Assembly, which passed a historic resolution calling for the impartial independent evaluation of the lessons to be learned from the global response. I give credit to Prime Minister Modi, who urged strengthening of the World Health Organization earlier at the G20 meeting in this year, and expressed satisfaction that this independent review, will be carried out while India chairs the World Health Organization's Executive Board. In all of Australia's multilateral interactions, we seek to shape institutions that are responsive, relevant, contemporary, accountable, well-run, free from undue influence, and have an appropriately strong Indo-Pacific focus. In other words, Australia too wants to play our part to make sure these institutions continue to deliver for all. To complement these economic and diplomatic efforts, we've also recognised the need for defence capabilities to keep pace with evolving Indo-Pacific dynamics and to ensure that we're positioned to contribute to a free, open and inclusive maritime environment. To that end, we recently announced our 2020 Defence Strategic Update and Force Structure Plan, which boosts investments in our defence capability by 40% from its last review in 2016. That represents in Australian dollars a $270 billion investment over the next decade. And this will include new investments by Australia in land, sea and air-based long-range and hypersonic strike missiles. This boost comes on top of what was already our Navy's biggest regeneration since the Second World War and our transition to a fifth-generation Air Force. In August, Prime Minister Morrison also made our largest ever investment in our cybersecurity capabilities, 1.7 billion Australian dollars, to keep Australian families and businesses secure online, to protect the resilience of our critical infrastructure, and ensure law enforcement agencies have the powers and technical capabilities to detect, target, investigate, and disrupt cybercrime. Now, these investments are driven and guided by Australia's assessment that we must be able to do more to effectively shape, deter, and respond to the increased challenges we face in the Indo-Pacific, most particularly in the Northeast Indian Ocean, Southeast Asia, and South Pacific. Now, this is a busy time for Australia and India indeed, and it's clear that throughout this crisis, both countries have recognised the strengths they each bring and the imperative to shape the Indo-Pacific together. We saw in plain view during the virtual summit between Prime Minister Modi and Morrison in June evidence of this. Both leaders recognised that it was more important than ever for like-minded democracies to work together, something Prime Minister Modi called a sacred duty, going on to remark that our countries can be factors for stability in our region and the world. And as has been mentioned, our relationship reached a high watermark, elevated to the level of a comprehensive strategic partnership. Our Prime Ministers laid out a substantial and ambitious plan for cooperation through 8 agreements across a range of areas where both countries can have an outsized impact in the Indo-Pacific. These cover defence and maritime security, cyber and critical technology, critical minerals, education, water, and public administration and governance. Our defence cooperation with India is at its highest point in history, with more collaboration and joint activities than ever before, and at the highest levels of complexity. And further collaborations will be more easily facilitated because of the new mutual logistics support agreement put together by our 2 Prime Ministers. At the June summit, our PMs also signed a joint maritime declaration and agreed on an action plan to cooperate under India's Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative to influence how rules, norms, and behaviours evolve in the maritime domain. In this, we will work hand in hand with our partners in Asean and the Indian Ocean River Association to strengthen regional approaches to open sea lanes, the rule of law, and responsible use of maritime resources supporting economic development. And we will continue to look to the quadrilateral, the Quad, security dialogue as an increasingly useful mechanism for strengthening shared interests in maritime security, counter-terrorism, and cybersecurity. Now, as I said at the outset, we have before us historically significant opportunities to collaborate across a range of significant issues. We're open for business and we're open for ideas as to what we will do and how we can do it with India. And there are 2 themes where I think the rubber will increasingly hit the road when it comes to cooperation between our 2 nations. The first is even greater cooperation in Southeast Asia, a region whose premier grouping, ASEAN, is recognised by both countries as central to the Indo-Pacific structure. Now, this makes sense. India's former Foreign Secretary made an important point at this year's Rasina Dialogue. Dismissing criticism of the concept of the Indo-Pacific, he pointed to India's millennia-old connections with Southeast Asia and the world, and noted the subsequent artificial barriers created by subsequent colonial imperialists. And it's true, India's influence throughout Southeast Asia is plain for all to see. Almost every country in the region adopted the Indian epic Ramayana. And Indian links weren't just cultural or religious. India had long-standing trade ties across the region as early as the 3rd century AD. It's no surprise that these links have survived today, or that Southeast Asia would welcome Indian engagement across the region. In many ways, New Delhi represents the opportunity to engage with a major power that comes open-handed and with fewer agendas or political overheads than others. Australia too has close and enduring partnerships in Southeast Asia. Our geographic proximity and shared economic and security interests all but guarantee our closeness. So I think that as nations on either end of the Indo-Pacific, with complementary interests an influence which intersects in Southeast Asia, India and Australia have lots of potential cooperation to explore in shaping the environment in which we live. The second theme of cooperation I draw your attention to is critical technologies. The Australian Strategic Policy Institute and the Indian Observer Research Foundation released a report yesterday on this topic that I commend to you all. It highlighted India's growing status as a global technology hub and noted Australia's position as one of the first countries to protect its critical cyber infrastructure by ensuring that high-risk vendors could not cause vulnerabilities to it. The report identifies numerous opportunities for collaboration between us, as both countries have effectively limited the range of vendors they'll allow into their 5G network. It leaves open the potential for ongoing cooperation between us in this area. And there's scope for cooperation and collaboration across the board on AI and space technologies to ensure the new norms and rules which will shape the operating environment are those that reflect our shared values, enabling and empowering citizens and businesses, not encroaching on civil liberties or enabling authoritarianism. This type of partnership would help put both of our countries to the forefront of tech collaboration globally and maximise the benefits of emerging technologies. It would do more than help mitigate against future vulnerabilities. It would also aid us to foster links with and support our smaller regional partners by helping to build their own capacity and development. These are just a taste of the options open to us, and that India and Australia will no doubt and have no trouble seeking to explore. Just watch this space. So in conclusion, I say that we live in a fraught and complex strategic environment, but I'd like to share a thought I voiced during to students at India's National Defence College way back in April. I said that Australia's fundamental national values won't change, even as our region's strategic environment does. We're a country committed to the rule of law, to political, economic and religious freedom, to liberal democracy and to equality. Those values fundamentally shape Australia's way of life, and in turn they shape our approach to strategy and to diplomacy. Regardless of COVID or the next crisis, whatever its shape, Australia will always seek a strategic environment where the rights of all states are respected, where open markets facilitate the flow of free trade, and where disputes are managed peacefully, legally, and without coercion. Australia knows that we can't sit back and hope these circumstances will emerge by themselves, and it knows that we have to actively work to help create them. Importantly, we also know we can't do this alone. We want to and will work with our top-tier partners like India to achieve these outcomes. And we need new ideas now more than ever. And that's where the students and staff of this university come in. Now is not the time for comfortable or conventional habits, or for waiting for crises to blow over before returning to normal or adapting to our circumstances. We're at an historical inflection point, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts in what follows, in what we should do about it. Thank you for your time. I look forward to those questions and your comments.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for this such an insightful lecture. And I think despite all the challenges posed by the COVID, it does actually present us with some opportunities to promote India-Australia cooperation. And I'm sure the post-COVID world will see our strategic partnership, a comprehensive strategic partnership blossom into several other areas outside of defense and security. So I have several questions. Let me just try and club them and present them to you. There are quite a few on the Quad. So what people would like to know is, what role do you think the Quad can play in the Indo-Pacific region with regard to maritime security? Do you think it will take an offensive kind of a role, offensive shape, or is it going to be kind of diffused the way it is currently?
I think it's important, firstly, to remember that the Quad is effectively a function of diplomacy. It's a diplomatic forum. It's been a useful diplomatic forum to discuss the challenges that our region faced between like-minded partners. And I think that will continue. And it has proven useful throughout this pandemic in doing some other things besides discussing those security threats that have been part and parcel of it since its inception. And that additional thing has been that, as I mentioned briefly in the remarks, that the foreign secretaries of India and Australia and those other countries extended out to countries like South Korea, New Zealand, and the like, have spoken regularly about their experiences with the pandemic to seek to learn the lessons and feed those lessons into our own national systems, in the hope that we can learn from each other as to how to handle this terrible disease. The second point is that in the meeting that we had of the Quad in Tokyo, which was a good thing that our foreign ministers were able to come together and have face-to-face discussions, because I make the point that as much as we have all discovered, students, educators and diplomats alike, the benefits of the technology we're currently using, we know that when it comes to sensitive strategic matters, they're much harder to guarantee that the wrong ears aren't listening. And so a face-to-face meeting of the ministers of the Quad was useful. And one of the practical outcomes of that is that they agreed to look at this issue of resilient supply chains, particularly in critical areas. One of the great lessons, of course, of the COVID pandemic has been the need to have diversified and resilient supply chains. But I think what the Quad is doing is looking at some of the strategic implications from that to ensure that if such circumstances arise again, it's not just everyday supply chains we know are protected, but those critical supply chains that are important to ensuring that the status quo remains in times of crisis, and that forces of authoritarianism can't come in and disrupt and create chaos and disorder for their own purposes. So I think the Quad is here to stay. I think the Quad will continue to be increasingly useful, but I just remind students that it's a diplomatic forum. It's not a defence forum.
Thank you very much. So another question is, Australia has experienced unwanted Chinese interference, and we've noted, at least on social media, interference in affairs of several universities, and I'm sure there would be many such cases where there has been interference in terms of freedom of the press and all that. So how do you think this has influenced your foreign policy? Or what impact you have had on your foreign policy in dealing with China?
Well, firstly, I think our foreign policy and these updates that I referred to in relation to our defence outlook and our approach to cybersecurity at home reflects Australia's view of the region and the world in total. So not just one country, but how we assess all the countries within our neighbourhood and around the world. And as you've seen, it's a significant step up by my government, which, for the first time sees us investing significant sums in hypersonic missiles, which presumably are designed to be a deterrent, and one hopes that that's all they're ever used for. But the broader issue, and I think the issue at the heart of the student's question, is the Australia-China relationship. And, I simply point to our decision on 5G as an example that when it comes to Australian decisions, our government will always make them on the basis of national interest, not on the basis of any other interests. When I spoke to the National Defence College in April, as I referred to in my speech, there was a degree of scepticism at that stage before the current rise in economic tensions between Australia and China, that Australia, it seemed to the students questioning me that it was impossible for Australia to make decisions that didn't suit the needs of what was then our leading trading partner. And I referred again to the 5G decision. I referred again to the fact that we've been a trading nation for more than 2 centuries. Over that time, we've had a number of countries and regions of the world that have been our #1 trading partner. And each time we've assumed that they've gained that rank because they're buying products from us that they need or want for their country. We don't force our products upon them. And whenever those partners have changed, we've found other partners. That's what trading nations do. But my message to your students is that our outlook on the world is judged by the national interest of Australia, not in reaction to the interests of any single country, but a comprehensive and skilled assessment of what we believe the risk framework in which we, our country, our citizens, and our businesses are operating.
Thank you, sir. There's one more question which pertains to ASEAN and also the relevant, the other forum in ASEAN, which is the ARF, the East Asia Summit. Now, it seems that the ASEAN seems to be losing its centrality, and it kind of has weakened many of these institutions. The major powers have actually reduced the agency of ASEAN and several of its institutions. Now, Australia itself is a major stakeholder in ASEAN, just as India. So how do you view this? Do you think it's actually weakened these institutions, or you think they could be strengthened, or India and Australia could actually work towards strengthening ASEAN? Or is it losing relevance in the current context?
No, I absolutely believe that ASEAN and some of those other pieces of architecture we have across the Indo-Pacific, whether the Pacific Island Forum, whether the East Asia Summit, I think they're as strong today as they were when we went into COVID, and I think they will only become stronger. Why do I say the latter? I say the latter because I think that Dr. Jaishankar's view of plurilateralism, where we will come together increasingly, not necessarily in large bodies like the United Nations, which will continue to operate, absolutely, but we will continue to gather collectively with like-minded countries in regions facing similar issues to discuss issues. And clearly, in Southeast Asia, ASEAN is central. And I note that in the discussions that in one of our trilaterals that we have, India, Australia and Japan, that we have made clear collectively and individually that in the establishment of the resilient supply chains that we seek to work together towards achieving, that we see them being shared with other countries in the region, and we specifically nominated ASEAN countries. Look, I think ASEAN will continue to be central. I think it will become part of the new normal that Dr. Jaishankar refers to as plurilateralism, a word that I still struggle to get my head and my mouth around, but a concept that I understand and a concept that increasingly seems to be working, because once upon a time we talked about bilaterals or we talked about multilaterals. We're now talking about trilaterals, and we're talking about bodies like ASEAN that were ahead of the curve, have shown their worth during COVID as well, because of the cooperation that's been going on within ASEAN in tackling this disease and some of the challenges that the disease and the changing strategic environment have thrown up. So no, I have great optimism and enthusiasm for the future of ASEAN.
Thank you, sir. There's another interesting question about possible areas for cooperation, bilateral cooperation between India and Australia in the Pacific Island countries, the PIC countries. Now, you're aware many years ago, there was a coup in Fiji, and Fiji in many ways is like Mauritius, little India. It's a sizable Indian diaspora. And I remember when I was in the Navy did consider sending a ship there. It was obviously shot down. That idea was shot down very quickly. But do you think there could potentially be opportunities to collaborate in providing assistance to the big countries, particularly now that we see the Chinese moving and Chinese influence expanding in a major way? So I think could that potentially be an area for collaboration?
Absolutely, and I said before that when I nominated 2 areas of potential cooperation, that there were other ideas. Watch this space, and my questioner, your student, is spot on the money, and it won't be long before he sees an example of India and Australia cooperating in the Pacific on a specific venture together, which is good. And look, it reflects 2 things. It reflects the fact that that Australia, in response to the sort of threats and influence that you've referred to, along with New Zealand and the Pacific Island countries themselves, are taking a stronger role within that region. It also reflects, I believe, perhaps the most welcome feature that I've noticed since I've been here in India, and that is India's willingness to step out and step up in the world. And India is no longer staying behind its borders. It's clearly, as demonstrated by its response to COVID, worked hard with its neighbours and has increasingly worked across the Indo-Pacific region, and happily is exerting its influence for the good at the multilateral level globally. And I think that's a good thing for humanity. I think it's a good thing that the Indian Health Minister is currently chairing the World Health Organization, because whilst Australia understands the benefits of a well-run World Health Organization, whilst Australia continues to be a strong supporter and funder of the organization because of the work we've seen it do with our Pacific neighbours, India has a far more personal relationship with the World Health Organization, given what that organization has done to assist its citizens in this country for many decades. And having Dr. Vadam as the chair brings a whole new perspective to that Leadership Council, one that cannot be replicated by Western countries who normally chair it, who have no direct personal sense of the importance of that organisation and the importance of ensuring that the next time there's a terrible disease, it is even fitter for purpose than it is currently.
Thank you very much, Sam. A couple of more. There's one about Australia's approach to the Blue Dot project, the United States, which is kind of the equivalent of the Chinese BRI. So what is Australia's approach to the Blue Dot initiative? Is it likely, are we going to see greater involvement in the coming years?
Look, the answer is we will continue to work with one of our strongest and longest allies on anything that's designed to try and ensure that we have peace, security across the world that enables citizens to go about their lives and encourages businesses to flourish. The only hesitation I suppose I put into any of that is that I think we'll all be pleased to see the back of the US election and to know what the next 4 years is going to look like, because as a former politician, as someone who came to this role from business, as someone who's now engaged in diplomacy, what I realise we all really want in life is certainty, so that we can get about planning with surety for the future. And without that certainty, it's much harder. Right. Happily, both of our governments were re-elected last year, and we don't have to worry about a disruption caused by elections, at least national elections, in either of our countries.
Yeah, that's very helpful, actually. There's one more question which popped up on the Quad, and it's about France. You've already spoken about this as a diplomatic forum. You think there could be a possibility that France could become part of the Quad? And let me just add, maybe there could be other countries, like-minded democracies in the Indo-Pacific, do you think the Quad could probably be expanded into a squad, including various democracies in the region, if it were to take, if it doesn't acquire it doesn't acquire the shape of a defense treaty? It could probably, this could be another form that it may take in the coming years.
Look, the answer is, I don't know the answer to that. My guess is that the Quad will stay the Quad for as long as the members of the Quad believe that it is serving a useful purpose. My second attempt at the answer is that I think if you believe in the doctrine of plurilateralism that Dr. Jaishankar refers to, having 3 or 4 people over here having the same discussion about a similar issue to 3 or 4 people over here and being on the same page doesn't require both of them to join together. It just requires both of them to exert their own influence in their own area, and you get the same outcome. So maybe I'm giving up too early here, but you'd be a brave man to say that either the Quad is not going to continue in its current form, as you would be to say that it's about to become a mini United Nations. I think the Quad will continue with the 4 partners it's got now. Those 4 partners in their own way will continue to engage with like-minded countries that they're close to, and we'll all continue to engage with the existing architecture that exists across the Indo-Pacific region.
Right, so thank you so much. Just 1 or 2 more. I think we have time for 2 more. So let me start with this one on the US-China Cold War. Now, were tensions to intensify and escalate, what would China's position as a rising middle power be? Will it side with the United States, or will it kind of take adopt a more neutral position?
So I either missed something there, or I got the last bit was.
So let me just repeat that quickly. What they're asking is, given the Cold War between United States and China, should tensions escalate, what will China, being a middle power, rising middle power in the region, what will China's position be? Will it try to take a neutral position or side openly with the United States?
I think you
I
mean
think the question is Australia.
Yeah, that's what
the middle power, not China.
Yeah,
that's what confused me. So sorry, because I thought I misheard, but I didn't. Yeah. So look, we have our own treaty obligations, and in the event that something like that happened, which I certainly hope it doesn't happen, I believe that we would fulfil our treaty obligations as we would fulfill any obligations we have with India. That's what allies do. That's what people that are in partnerships and relationships do. I think if I can do what politicians used to do, sir, I think the more interesting question that arises from a number of the queries that I've had today is, what is it that has prompted China to take an unusually strident approach to the rest of the world? And if this is the last question of the day, sir, I would leave perhaps with this thought, and that is that one of the things that India and Australia shares is democracy. China has come a long way over the last 3 decades. It has a burgeoning middle class. And as we know in our democracies, aspiration, once it takes a hold within a society, creates many demands upon government. And in our systems, if those demands aren't met, if those demands grow in noise, elections occur, and both of us have histories, not as we've seen in last year, where governments are re-elected, but often where governments are changed. So there is a pressure valve that exists in democracies that does not exist in authoritarian countries. And China's success, its economic success, has delivered many people into the middle class, given them a better standard of living. And all I know is that when that's happened in the West, when that's happened in democracies, it's also come with an increasing demand upon government. And happily, we live in countries where that demand can be released in a peaceful way. and perhaps in a pressure cooker, it releases itself in other ways.
Thank you very much, sir. I think we'll have to close the Q&A session, and let me now hand over to Sean for concluding remarks and a vote of thanks. Over to you, Sean.
Thank you, Shishir. First and foremost, greetings from Australia. Namaste. And of course, a very big thank you to His Excellency, the Honourable Barry O'Farrell, for taking the time out of, I'm sure, your very busy schedule at the moment, no doubt about that, to spend time with faculty and students from Jindal Global University and other guests as well. One of the things you mentioned in your talk was now is a time for ideas and creativity in the context of the bilateral relationship. And I have no doubt that amongst the students and faculty who have listened to your comments and thoughtful insights on the relationship today, there are a number of ideas, and certainly the creative juices are flowing in our academic brains as to how we can further contribute to scholarship and public policy debate on this growing and, as you said, enduring partnership. I have no doubt, from a personal and professional perspective, having lived in India now for 10 years, if you were to, in academic speak, conduct a content analysis on what was in the newspapers 10 years ago about Australia and India, no doubt it would be cricket or a few other stories here and there. But today, if you look at the newspapers, it's all about the strength of this growing relationship and strategic partnership. And I think it's telling that, 5 years ago when the Centre for India-Australia started, there was myself. In fact, I was the only Australian at Jindal, and there were 1 or 2 partnerships. And subsequently, we have now 5 Australians and about 20 Indian academics who have studied and or lived in Australia in a short period of 5 years, which I think is incredible, and 20 strong partnerships, which ties into your theme and point. Now is the time for ideas and creativity. And I think academic institutions can play a really important role there. And these kinds of partnerships are really important. So we look forward to working with you and your High Commission, and of course with the government generally and our academic partners to help this enduring and growing partnership for the next 5 and 10 years. So thank you again for your comments and insights on this very timely topic, and we look forward to working with you for weeks, months, and years to come. And thank you for everyone for your questions and comments on both YouTube and the Zoom link as well. So thank you once again, and with that I bid you farewell. Shishir, I'll allow you to close if you will.
Yeah. Thank you, Sean. Thank you very much. So it all remains for me now to thank everybody for this wonderful event. Particularly, let me start with thanking Your Excellency for taking time off to come and address the students. Very inspiring and very insightful lecture. And I'm sure we will be in touch with your High Commission, with more scholarship and fresh ideas on how we can promote Indo-Australia bilateral ties. So thank you so much. Let me also thank the Vice Chancellor for taking time to attend this event, and Dr. Sriram Cholia. And last but not the least, I would like to thank Captain Simon Bateman, who actually helped to coordinate and make this event possible. So thank you all. With that, we will close the session. Have a good evening and a great weekend ahead.
Thank you, Shishir. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, and good night.